Good evening. Welcome to this session of experiencing the Buddha's teaching. This course that I've been teaching this year at Vajrayana Institute. So my name is Wai Chong, and we are in the midst of a topic of finding protection in refuge and karma. So just to start off by maybe reviewing a little bit of what I have touched on over the last two sessions. So we on the topic of refuge, the refuge within the Buddhist teaching, which is also an important topic because technically the definition of a Buddhist is someone that go for refuge to what we call the three jewels. And last week I touched on and sort of describe it, what are the three jewels of refuge in Buddhism. The Buddha jewel, the Buddha, the Dharma jewel, the teaching, and the Sangha jewel, which is the community. Right? And so we have been exploring this whole idea of refuge and the objects of refuge. And I have led a meditation where we explore a bit what are our personal objects of refuge, which may not match exactly what we learn in the Buddhist teachings. Quite often, I quite often joke, and I think it's quite true that in our daily life, those of us who view ourselves as Buddhists, quite often when asked, we say, "Oh yes, my objects of refuge are the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha." But it is not uncommon at times of difficulties or challenges, or when we face with overwhelming negative feelings. We may not remember our three jewels. I might reach out for my favorite objects of refuge, comfort eating. Potato chips. I just purchased some more of my mundane objects of refuge, and it's so much easier in those. And there's this habit, of course, at time when faced with very unpleasant feelings or difficult times, that sometimes we, in a way, like practice escapism, and reach out for that bag of potato chips. Turn on the TV, or in this case, these days, turn on the internet, whatever device you have, and binge watch and chow down all the chips mindlessly. It's very important to eat it mindlessly, because if you were to eat it mindfully, you might not like it that much. Yeah. So now that we have sort of touched a bit on the refuge, on objects of refuge, both mundane and whatever it has been taught and presented in Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Today, I really want to talk about the action of reliance. What does it mean to rely on the three jewels? And why would we rely on them? So right at the beginning, I introduced the two conditions for refuge. First conditions, of course, is there must be something that we are concerned about, or we are fearful about, or anxious about, that kind of propel us to seek refuge. If we feel perfectly fine and at peace and at ease, the idea of refuge doesn't really come up. It's only in the face of suffering, pain, something very unpleasant or really unwanted, and then we sense that anxiety or fear, those unpleasant feelings arise, that we look around for a place of safety or for protection, for refuge. So the first conditions, of course, for refuge is usually we just summarize it and say fear, but may not be the best word, because we are not always fearful. Of course, there are times we are in fear. We find ourselves in dangerous situation, but there are also other occasions, maybe not so much fear, but we are faced with highly unpleasant feelings, a lack of safety, lack of security, feeling very unsettled, very lost, confused. Those are also conditions that propel us to seek refuge. And the second condition, of course, is there must then be something trustworthy that we can rely on or protect us or to help us to overcome the challenges, the difficulties, to help us to face those unpleasantness in life. So those are the two conditions that I've also touched on previously. So today I thought we can explore the action of relying on refuge, or sometimes we use the word go for refuge. So how do we actually go for refuge? How do we actually rely on our objects of refuge? And so this topic is presented in the teaching in several ways. So I just want to briefly touch on a few points, and you might want to reflect on them and think of them, especially try to relate the information that we learned, maybe in a class like this, or we read about it, or these days a lot of people listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks. The most important thing, of course, in order to experience Buddha's teaching is to relate the information with something in our life, in our own experience, and to make that connection between abstract concepts and ideas with actual experiences, bring them together, and then to see what come out of it, what are our responses, what are our feelings, what are our thoughts that come forth in response to mixing and bringing together ideas and our own actual experiences, and see whether they match or they are completely contradictory, and see whether we agree or we disagree, and see whether out of that comes a different kind of understanding and insights for us. So that's how we are able to put the Buddha's teachings into practice, and for us to truly experience the benefits from them. So going for refuge, first and foremost, is to understand the function of the three objects of refuge that we talk about in Buddhism. How do we relate to them? The Buddha is explained as the teacher of refuge, or the shower of the way. So the Buddha, if we are referring to the historical Buddha, although in Mahayana traditions, which is the background of Tibetan Buddhism, we also accept many Buddhas. At any moment, there are infinite numbers of Buddhas. So Buddhas are those we call those who have awakened to reality, to the truth, fully awakened. And that awakening free them from the causes of suffering, or the craving, or the delusions, the ignorance that are the sources of our suffering, according to the Buddha's teaching. And so the Buddhas are viewed as the teacher of refuge, who present the teachings, who show us the way out of suffering, out of our dilemma, to arrive at a better place, to find peace and true genuine happiness within ourselves. So the Buddha's teachers of refuge. The Dharma, the teaching, as I explained last week, of two types. One is scriptural, which is symbolized by all the texts and all the media that store the Buddha's teaching in whichever form. Or another way of looking at knowledge and information. And another way of understanding the Dharma is the realization within our own heart and mind, the understanding we develop, the transformation that actually happened within ourselves, the deep, profound insights that we gain, which really change the way we see things and change the way we feel about things, and also how we respond to things. Basically, almost a complete change of heart and change of mind. And so much so that we find ourselves, we are liberated from the bondage of our delusions, of our bad habits, and so forth. So there are these two aspects of Dharma, the scriptural and the realizational Dharma. And so the Dharma is relate to as the actual refuge, because this is what truly set us free from fear, from danger, set us free from the causes of suffering, according to the Buddha, which are the ignorance, the delusions, the afflictive emotions that afflict us. So we are set free from them through applying the Dharma. And the Sangha, the community, which we can interpret it as I mentioned last week, in a more narrow, conventional sense. In Tibetan Buddhism, it usually refers to the monastic community, the monks and nuns who devote their life, who make drastic change to their lifestyles so that they can devote their full energy to the Dharma, to the teaching, to the practice. And then the ultimate Sangha is can be a single person, can be a group, can be a single person. In the ultimate sense is someone who fully embodied the Dharma, someone who actually gained the actual realization within their mind. And we call them the noble ones, in Sanskrit, the Aryas. So these are people who actually have the realization. And if you have the realization, one person is enough to qualify as a community. I suppose if you don't have realization, then we need a whole bunch of them to support us. So the Sangha, the community, which however you understand it, are there to assist us in finding refuge. They are the support, they're the helpers, the assistants, or they are companions on the journey. There are people who share the similar aspirations, like-minded people, that we can support one another. And some of them are more experienced than us, then they can give us guidance. Others, maybe our peers, they can support us by just by being our Dharma friends on this on our journey, this spiritual journey. So those are the three objects of refuge, and how we relate to each one of them differently. And for us to truly rely on them, we need to sort out how we're going to do that. How are we going to relate to each one of them? How are we really going to rely on them in life, in reality, in order to derive the benefits, in order for us to really feel or find that sense of refuge within ourselves. And in the Tibetan Buddhist context, quite often we talk about spiritual teacher or guru. Let's just call it spiritual teacher. And we regard spiritual teachers as the embodiments of all three refuges, three objects of refuge. And that makes things a bit easier for us because we see our spiritual teacher. For those of us who happen to have spiritual teachers, not to despair if you don't have one yet. So we can see the spiritual teacher as embodying all three refuge, because in the sense that when you were to meet or interact with your spiritual teachers, he or she, in a way, is in the role of the Buddha, the teacher of the Dharma, the teacher of the refuge. They teach us formally in the teaching setting, or informally in daily interactions. Right? And they are also embodiment of the Dharma, in the sense that the Dharma is in them in the form of knowledge, in the form of understanding, in the form of their own realizations and insights and transformations. So that is also the Dharma jewel is also present with them. And also Sangha, because they are also been fellow human beings, also serve the function of support of a community, that we can. We do not necessarily interact them always in a formal way or always receiving teachings, but we can just have a conversation with them. We can seek them out for their advice, or just by interacting with them, they serve as a role model. They model a different way to be in the world, different way to relate or to respond to situations. So that is a simple way to understand the three jewels of refuge in terms of reliance, in the sense of relying on a fully qualified spiritual teacher. But then again, we can also relate to the three objects individually, separately. And I like to explore this topic by inviting people to expand the scope, to not just limit it into a religious context or a Buddhist context. You can also think about it in daily life in a more generalized context. Who are, for example, the people? Who are the people in our life, real or fictional, present or past, who can also play the role of a Buddha for us, in a sense, like someone who is really wise, someone who has, in his or her own way, realized the truth and serve as a shower of the way, as a guide, so to speak. And by thinking that way, I think it's more accessible for more people. Not everybody necessarily Buddhist, and also it also enable us to talk about the topic of refuge in a way that is more applicable to more people. Even people around you who may not be Buddhist, but nonetheless, we can also have a discussion. We can also reflect on the topic of refuge in relation to them. Yeah. So think about the teacher of refuge. So think about the Dharma in a more generalized sense. Dharma is simply, in a way, about truth, about reality. Right? And in fact, it said that if you have deep understanding of the Dharma, you can see the Dharma everywhere, literally everywhere. Any object, any phenomena can be viewed as presenting the Dharma. In fact, phenomena in Sanskrit is also called Dharma. In fact, this Sanskrit word Dharma has many, many different meanings. We can refer to teaching, can refer to truth, can refer to phenomena. Literally, every single thing in our life is a Dharma. And we can interpret that as if we have the understanding, we have that awareness. Every object is constantly giving us a Dharma teaching. Sound, anything, basically sound, sights, any object, my cup of tea, your mobile phone, is constantly proclaiming the truth, the reality. If we are attuned to it, if we are able to learn from it. Yeah. And of course, then we surround ourselves with different people in our life. We all have our own community, our own support group. So it's not really something so foreign to us, this idea of relying on a community, on a group. Of course, hopefully we find a group or community that is truly supportive of us, that is reliable, trustworthy, and that we build genuine relationship with each one of them as part of that community. Yeah. So if you think in this way, then we can actually see how going for refuge works for each one of us in our own specific context. Right? So feel free to post your comments or feedback or questions if you have any on the live chat, and I will attend to them. So at least those of you who are live online, we can have some discussion if you have any questions. Yeah. Okay, so we talk about when in the teaching of the path to the stages of the path to enlightenment, then we are asked to reflect on and to practice reliance on the basis of knowing the good qualities of the three jewels. It's almost like the more you know what's so good about them, then the greater is our sense of trust in them, and the more likely it is that we will remember them and come to rely on them. So we will rely on the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, on the basis of really admiring their wonderful good qualities. Dharma seems, this comment, Dharma seems therefore to be non-dualistic. Well, I suppose if you can understand non-duality, which is a complicated term, That's fine, but it's also all right to think dualistically. Good and bad are quite dualistic, and that is also applicable in our daily life. Certain things, certain activities, or certain objects of refuge. I was talking about um, good, healthy, constructive. Then again, in our daily life, we find ourselves relying. Some of us rely on certain objects of refuge. Maybe for a time being, they serve the purpose, help us to avoid or distract us from those awful feelings and take our mind away from the stress. But in the long run, there are objects of refuge that are not so helpful and may even be destructive. For example, alcohol, yeah, which is unfortunately quite a common so-called object of refuge that people turn to and in order to help them deal with whatever it is they are facing. And so that is dualistic, and that is fine because one thing about becoming aware of our objects of refuge is so that we can evaluate and see, hey, what am I relying on to support me in my life? And are these objects of refuge trustworthy? Are they truly beneficial, or are they destructive? Yeah. So I was saying that one way to enhance our sense of refuge is to become aware of the good qualities of our objects of refuge. And this may take some time. It's not just a theoretical thing that you listen, you heard a lot of information that we may associate to each one of them. But this actually more likely and more helpful is when they come through our actual experiences in our interaction with the three objects of refuge. So in our interaction with the Dharma, we learn about the Dharma, we test it out, we apply some of the teaching and practices, and then we get to see for ourselves the positive effects of the Dharma teachings and practices. And that allows us to have a first-hand experience of the good qualities of the Dharma. And once you are able to set up this kind of interactions, then it greatly increases our confidence in the Dharma, our trust in the Dharma jewel of refuge. And you will find that more and more we would naturally come back and rely on it. When we face with difficulties, when we face with confusion, the mind may automatically turn to the Dharma for the support. And we take refuge in the Dharma. Or in the case of the Sangha, the community, there is also, again, if we have actual experience with a community of fellow Buddhist practitioners, monastic or otherwise, and through building up that friendship or interactions, that relationship, and at times we really find it so helpful, so reliable, and really make a big difference in our own life. And then we can to appreciate not just theoretically the good qualities of the Sangha, the community, but we have actual experience of those good qualities and the beneficial effect that come out of it. And that really help us to develop trust and enable us to really come to rely on the Sangha. With the Buddha, is a little bit more tricky. I mean, as I said, the easiest case is you have a spiritual teacher, then it's almost like a spiritual teacher is like the representative or the embodiment of the Buddha in your life. But then again, there are other ways to relate to the Buddha. For example, if you look at all the different statues in the altar, those statues are kind of material representation of the Buddha, the awakened ones. And also we can, through making offerings, through having a shrine altar or visiting a place like the Vajrayana Institute, meditating in the presence of in front of such an altar or shrine, and we get a different feel from it. We actually can have actual experiences. I'm a bit unusual because I actually prefer a more abstract representation of the Buddha than a Buddha statue. I quite like stupa, and I find in my own experience that Many years ago, I did a long retreat in New Zealand at a Buddhist retreat center, and they have a huge big stupa on the ground. And in between my meditation sessions, I would take walk. I will practice this ancient Buddhist way of circumambulating, just walking around the stupa. Partly exercise, partly to get myself out of my meditation hut, and also partly is the circumambulation is a way of showing respect and veneration to this object that is an abstract object. I hope you have seen a stupa, a reliquary, usually where you place the ashes or bones of Buddhist masters, or the Buddha. And you have different design, usually where symbolic of different aspects of the Dharma. I felt a kind of peace when I'm circumambulating or just sitting next to the stupa and meditating. And so that is also another way in which I can have the interaction with the Buddha Jewel. In this case, in the form of an abstract representation, a reliquary of the Buddha. And for me, that works has a much stronger effect. I really notice the strong positive association I have with the stupas and what they represent for me. And in their presence, in their physical presence, I really find that it helps my mind, helps my heart. The stupa is a representation of the steps to awakening. Yes, stupas have complicated symbolic representation. In different tradition in Buddhism, they can have interpreted in many different ways. Yeah, and at first it started off as, I think, just a mound of earth. It's almost like, basically it's like a grave, so to speak. Yeah, a reliquary, and then you put the bones or the remains, the relics of the Buddha or Buddhist master in it, and then as the time passes, it gets a bit different design. Different design appear, and each of the design has a symbolic meaning to it. And I think quite often, yes, could be steps to awakening, or could be different aspects of enlightenment. Yeah, I don't really pay much attention most of the time to the symbolic meaning of each of the features of the different design of the stupa. I more rely on my just a kind of association with it. Yeah. Okay, so today I want to present a meditation or a kind of reflection, which I thought is a good way for us to practice and start to work with this whole topic of refuge. Last week we did a meditation called Meeting the Buddha, if I didn't remember wrongly. And so that is a way where it's very common in Tibetan tradition to, as part of the refuge practice. In fact, there is a practice which I thought I'd share with you, this story of repeating this refuge formula. This one where we say, I go for refuge to the Buddha, I go for refuge to the Dharma, I go for refuge to the Sangha. And in Tibetan tradition, we have another one. I go for refuge to the Guru, to the spiritual teacher. And we repeat this formula 100,000 times. It's one of those foundational practice that we do. And I did it many, many years ago when I was new to Tibetan Buddhism, and I suddenly decided that I will take up the challenge. I would just do this 100,000 repetition of the refuge formula. And I did it in the shorter form. In Sanskrit, we say Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. But I pay homage to the Buddha, to the Dharma, to the Guru, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And most of the time, I'm just blah, 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 mumbling the refuge formula. I'm not quite sure at that time. I probably don't have a very good understanding of refuge. I mean, I understand it to some extent. I have certain feeling for it, which is why I took the refuge ceremony. I identify myself as a Buddhist. I undertake it's quite a time-consuming, quite a big commitment. You cannot have break in our tradition. Every day you must repeat this. There's a practice, certain visualizations of visualize the Buddha, all the different objects of refuge in space in front of you, and you're surrounded by sentient beings, and you repeat this formula, and you visualize light and blessing comes to you, and so on and so forth. It's a little bit complicated, yeah. And there cannot be any break. You have to do it every single day. Then only then can you accumulate the count. Of course, the count is not the most important thing, but it often end up become the most important thing. You're always keeping track of the numbers. You're trying to finish it as quickly as possible, and so on and so forth. And after 100,000 repetition, I cannot say that I necessarily have a much stronger sense of refuge. That comes much later. That actually comes through going through different experiences in life and coming to rely on the Buddha's teaching to help me, and in various ways coming to discover for myself, the wonderful qualities I see in the three jewels, and coming to develop my sense of trust in them. But while doing the practice itself, I was just simply mumbling 100,000 times the refuge formula. I noticed all sorts of different reactions and feelings that come up. Most of the time, I'm just very tired. I want to go to bed. I'm just, I have to finish this practice. Otherwise, I have to start over again. So I'm always trying to recite the prayers as quickly as possible to get it done. So I have to say that even after doing 100,000 repetition, I'm not sure. I'm very familiar with the prayers, but I'm not sure I necessarily have at least in my case, a deeper sense of refuge or what it means to me. So because of that, my experience, so I thought we'll try something a bit different today. I want to introduce this meditation or reflection, take some time to explain it, and then we can do this practice together. And also is a good way to link this topic of refuge to the next topic of karma. And this practice is called the 5 remembrance or 5 reflections taught by the Buddha, where he advised that it might be good to regularly, if not daily, to bring to mind these 5 different facts, 5 different points, and just to remind ourselves of them, and maybe to dwell a little bit on them. And they are kind of interesting. So I just read to you one version of it, and this is what we are going to do next. These 5 things to reflect on, to remind ourselves, these 5 facts, combine what we have been talking about over the last few weeks. So it goes like this: I'm of the nature to grow old. Aging is unavoidable. That's the first one. I'm of the nature to fall sick, to have ill health. Illness is unavoidable. That's the second. I'm of the nature to die. Death is unavoidable. That's the third. All that is dear and beloved to me are of the nature to change. Separation is unavoidable. That's the fourth. So these 4 things summarize what we have touched on: death awareness, the fact that we are going to die. Also that while alive, we face with various challenges of illness, of aging, of loss, different kind of losses, separation from things that we hold dear or we are attached to. Of course, there's others, which is the meeting with things that are unpleasant, our wishes not being fulfilled. But here the Buddha emphasized mainly separation from things that we hold dear and beloved. So these are situations of challenges, and also facts of life that we have to face, even though quite often we spend a lot of our time and energy denying them, avoiding them, facing them, living in denial. And they are also things that will turn our attention, our mind to seek refuge. Where or what can protect me or support me when I come face to face with these 4 different facts, of aging, of illness, of death, and of separation from what we hold dear and beloved in life. And the 5th one, the 5th remembrance, is in a way the Dharma, in the form of karma. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related through my actions, and live supported by my actions. Whatever I do, whether good or evil, that I will inherit. So there's a teaching of karma, which we'll talk about it next week, more of it. But karma is really, to use the simple word, actions. And so it's an interesting reflection. The fifth one is talking about reminding ourselves of the power of our actions. I am the owner of my actions. And if I summarize that whole big paragraph, I'm the owner of my actions. Whatever I do, be it good or evil, good or bad, of that I will inherit. I will experience their corresponding consequences. And this is actually, it sounds very strange, but it's actually a very positive thing that regardless of what we face or whatever that we will face, that we actually are capable of taking actions. We can make choices, and our actions, our choices make a difference to us, to others. And so I always find this a very positive thing. It's emphasizing the power of our choices, the power of our actions, even in the face of situations or facts of life that are quite difficult to bear or difficult to deal with. Yeah, that the Buddha reminded us that we always have a choice. We always can take certain actions, and that out of that actions, depending on our choices, our actions, then there are corresponding effects that come out of it. So if we are able to choose wisely, we're able to engage in constructive actions, then we get to experience some good results. And likewise, if we make wrong choices, we engage in destructive actions, then we have to suffer their consequences. Yeah. And so this is by reminding of us that we are relying on the Dharma. And when we are able to put that into practice, then there is a reliance on the Dharma Jewel. And we, without the need to just believe in it, we can actually see in action, and we can examine it, observe, and find out for ourselves whether is that true or not in our own experiences. So I thought this is a wonderful little, at least for me, a little kind of meditation and practice to combine the two aspects of refuge. What is it that we fear, that we dread, that we find difficult to deal with? The first four, remembrance, is mainly helping us to get us to start to face the facts of life. These are the more difficult aspects of our life, of course, aging, sickness, death, and separation. And also point us to something positive, something constructive that we can do. We can come back and rely on the Dharma, on the teaching, in the form of the teaching of karma, of actions, that remind us of the power of our choices. Not just big choices, but even small choices we make throughout the day in our daily life. Every little choices, every little actions that we engage in can have a profound impact on our life, on ourselves, and also on others. How wonderful that is. I think it's such a, if you think in that way, it's very empowering, very encouraging. So I thought this is a wonderful way for us to meditate and to reflect and to get a sense of refuge. This is one way to do it. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to practices, very Buddhistic practices like this one, that a lot of times people don't do this kind of practice. They belong to a category, I usually call them sobering meditation. They're very sober. They're not about feeling nice, feeling relaxed, feeling pleasant, uplifted. No, they are pretty can be pretty raw, because they kind of make you face up to, I wouldn't say rub your face in it, but make you face up to aspects of our life that we have a tendency to live in denial or try to avoid or try to distract ourselves from. We spend so much energy and time actually in avoidance that in actual fact, if we were to just stop and just turn our attention to them, just to face up to them without doing anything extreme, just face up to them. It actually set us free. Set us free from all those strategies of avoidance and distraction that took up so much of time and energy. Almost like it liberate us so that we don't need to waste all this energy and time in avoiding the facts of life, in denying them or escaping from them. We just face them, and then they say, oh, all right, then I have all this time and energy left over to do what is actually helpful and constructive towards the future, towards my own future. Yeah. This really reminded me of a teaching from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In fact, I think recently I just saw on the internet, His Holiness sort of gave a short, I don't know whether it's a letter or it's a teaching, in response to the current pandemic, talking about reminding us that we can face the coronavirus from a place of compassion. And in the various, the story I'm going to tell is in various occasions when I attended public teaching or public talk by His Holiness Dalai Lama. And on quite a few occasions, people have made a request to him. Often the requests come in the form of, can we have a moment or minute of silence to pray for world peace, or to pray for certain groups of people, or for certain cause, worthy cause. And His Holiness is very interesting. At least the few times that I observe him, he often, when come time to pray, so to speak, he will say, oh, let's meditate on compassion, which is a very different thing from what is originally requested. A moment, a minute of silence, a prayer. And instead he liked to turn, at least the way I see it, he liked to direct people's attention to this inner quality of compassion. And compassion, which starts from the heart, but then manifests out in our action, in compassionate choices, compassionate actions, is to do with that statement of karma, that I am the owner of my actions, that I can make choices in the sense that I can actually act in my daily life from a place of compassion. I can nurture that inner quality of a compassionate intention, and then manifest that compassion in speech, in my behavior, in the various choices I make. And I think that is His Holiness teaching. And in that way, we are taking active steps to bring about world peace. After all, if you think about it, how can a minute of silence become a cause of world peace, isn't it? Of course, it is with a good intention. Of course, that is a very positive gesture towards something, towards the aspiration for there to be peace in the world. But I think His Holiness, at least the way I read it, offer another way of looking at it, that we can actively create the causes and conditions for us to experience peace. And one of those causes or condition is nurturing a compassionate heart, to cultivating compassion, both in meditation and also in action in our daily life. All right. So let me explain a little bit how I would approach a meditation like this, and then we can do one together. So this is a reflection or remembrance. So it's almost like a reminder. So almost like we don't feel that you need to do a lot of things to it. Just repeat the 5 phrases. Feel free to change the words now. There are many different versions actually of the 5 remembrance on the internet, so you can Google it, and see which version is the choice of words more agreeable to you, and you find greater affinity for it, and you might want to adopt that version if you are interested in doing this practice at other times. So I would recommend just after we settle into our meditation, just to drop that each phrase into our mind and heart. Just repeat it, slowly, at our own pace, And don't feel that you need to do anything about it. You're just simply bringing that those words and the fact associated with them to mind. And one way of understanding the word remembrance, remember, or to recollect is, of course, to bring it to mind, bring it and set it at the forefront, the foreground of our awareness and attention, and allow ourselves to notice it, to attend to it, to become aware of it. And then as we do that, we can observe and see whether what kind of response may come from. Maybe nothing at all. Most of the time you just nothing. Don't feel anything, don't think anything, nothing is triggered. It's perfectly fine. Other times, some other thoughts may come up, memories may surface, or images or feelings. And then we can attend to that as well. See them as responses, and that tell us something about ourselves. That helps to deepen our own understanding of how we relate to each of those phrases. Yeah. So I'm of the nature to grow old. Aging is unavoidable. So drop that line, the phrase in the mind, and see what it stirs up for you. And if you like, of course, you can think about it. No, you can think of it in your own way. You can also allow it to bring forth different images or memories that you can attend to, if that works for you. And so there is no fixed way of approaching it, but it's just the main thing, of course, as the name implies, is to recollect and to remember each one of them. Right? So that's true for aging, for sickness. Although you may say that in our modern world, with advanced technology, maybe it's possible to avoid sickness. I wouldn't begrudge you if you managed to do that. No, I would rejoice that you managed to live a life free of illness. No, I wouldn't wish you to be ill or sick, especially at this time. But as we observe the pandemic in the news and so on, we can really maybe hope we appreciate the fact that even when we are well and healthy, we're young or whatever, we are still given certain conditions, subject to illness. In this case, from an external factor like the virus. Other times comes from within the body, within ourselves, and even the fact that as we age, our body, through wear and tear and so on, become more susceptible to illness. So it is a fact of life. Yeah, even though maybe in this very moment we are healthy, we are well, we are strong. Doesn't take much for us to fall sick, and then the whole experience shift, right? And the third one, of course, is death. I'm of the nature to die. I can't run away from it. I might not want to think about it, but it is a fact. Death is unavoidable. The fourth one is probably a little bit more painful because we don't really like to think about separation. We like to think about loss. We have strong attachment, but it's important, even though with attachment, at least to start to let into our awareness this fact that all that I hold dear and beloved to me are all of the nature of change. They're subject to change. They will change. And one day there will be separation. If they didn't leave me, I'm really the one that will be leaving them behind as I face death. So that is also another fact of life. So in the face of the greater awareness of these four facts of life, what can we do? What are something positive or constructive that we can do? Where can we find refuge, a place of safety and support? And that is the fifth remembrance, the fifth recollection, that we can, in a way, take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, take refuge in our own actions and choices. And especially in the face of difficulties, the type of actions we engage in, the choices we make are all the more important. They make a big difference, right? So I am the owner of my actions. I suggest a shorter version because the classic version is quite long. I'm the owner of my actions. Whatever I do, whether good or evil, of that I will inherit. I will face their consequences. And for me, I read that in a very positive way. So if I long for happiness, then all I need to do is to start to create the causes of happiness, to engage in those actions, to make those choices that are conducive to happiness. Of course, I'm being lazy. I like to complain. I like to grumble about situations in my life, complain about things that didn't go my way. But if I were to step back and look at my own behavior, then I'm engaged. I'm wasting my opportunity. Wasting my energy and time, making this not a very wise choice, although it's a habit of me to grumble and grumble and grumble. This is not a constructive action. All it did is to promote a greater feeling of dissatisfaction and unhappiness. Instead, in that moment, I could make a different choice. And maybe you've heard this old story of me. I used to fill the water bowls on the altar, and that's my time to grumble about my life, different things in my life. So out of the 21 bowls, I used to spend 20 bowls filling them and grumbling about it. But at the last bowl, when I realized that, it's the last bowl. If I were to grumble, that means I didn't make any offering to the Buddha. I forgot about the Buddha. All I did is just filling bowls with water and just give vent to my own complaints and unhappiness. So usually, hopefully, if I were to, in that last bowl, put aside my complaint, turn my attention to here and now, and mindfully fill up the bowl with water without spilling it, and all the time think of it as an act of offering, a gesture of respect to the Buddha, and what he represents and what he has done. Yeah. Then that becomes a very positive, or at least for Buddhists, it's a meritorious action. It creates lots of merit. So even in an episode like this, you can see the power of our actions, the power of our choices. But it only works if we rely on it, if we remember how powerful our actions can be. All right, so let's do a meditation together. And I invite you to adopt a meditation posture that is more supportive of your body, that feels comfortable, that doesn't introduce unnecessary pain. There's bound to be some discomfort. We carry quite a bit of tension and contractions in our body, but at least we hope that the posture we adopt does not introduce additional suffering to us. Yeah? So you can, in the privacy of your own room, your own place, wherever you are now, feel free to sit. You can sit on a chair, like what I'm doing, sit on the floor on a cushion, or in some kneeling posture. And I especially encourage people, since you're at home in a private place, you might want to try lying down on your back. You can lie on the floor on a yoga mat or some padding, lie on a firm bed, or you have a long enough lounge, you can lie on it. And just adopt a supine position for meditation. It's quite helpful because a lot of us has a lot of tension in our body, and the supine position can really help us to release a lot of those tension and help us settle into a more relaxed, comfortable posture. And on that basis, there may be a very positive impact on our meditation. So take a few moments, let your body find its way into your posture. Feel free to close your eyes completely if you find that helpful. In that posture of yours, see if you can become aware of sensations coming through beneath you, coming through at the different touch points between your body and your seat, and the body and the ground. We want to allow the body to feel well supported in the posture, well balanced, in order to trigger the natural process of unwinding, where your body can start to loosen up a bit, doesn't have to be so tight, so tense, the body can, in its own time, release some of those unnecessary tensions and tightness. And so that it can really settle down comfortably into the posture. And for the first few minutes of this meditation, we're going to make use of our natural breath as a way to help body and mind to shift gears, to transition and settle into meditation. So see if you can attend to the different sensations of the breath throughout the body. Allow yourself to fully experience your in-breath and out-breath. Breathing out, see if you can become aware of that natural sense of release that comes along with the out-breath, where the muscles of our chest and our diaphragm relax, allowing the air to flow out. If you can tune into that feeling of release as you breathe out, why not make use of this opportunity to deepen the sense of release? Maybe some of those discomforts or tensions in the body that are unneeded or unnecessary, maybe that can also be released with the out breath. So for example, quite often we unconsciously tense up the muscles of the face. So see if you can, alongside the breath, check in and notice how your face is feeling. If you do notice any tightness or tension in the forehead or in the jaw or in the muscles around your eyes, see if you can, as you breathe out, facilitate a process of release. Relax those muscles of the face and allow in a feeling of ease and comfort or softness into your own face. Coming back to the breath, and it's quite normal if you find throughout the meditation that attention is drawn elsewhere, to sounds, to thoughts. It's not something that we need to be frustrated about. We simply invite the attention to come back to whatever it is we are meditating on. First the breath, and later the phrases of the 5 recollection. So coming back to the breath, breathing out, we can also release the different thoughts, images, memories, judgments that pop into the mind that are not related to the meditation. So coming back to the breath sensations, reconnect with the breath sensations in our body. And each time when we breathe out, we can remind ourselves, we can remind our body and mind to release. And see if we can, with each out breath, allow body and mind to experience deepening sense of release, releasing them from all things unnecessary, unwanted, and unhelpful. And now we can turn our attention to the five remembrance, the reflection on the five facts of life, and see if you can. Feel free to change the wordings, but repeat the phrase in your own words, slowly, mindfully, at your own pacing. Just drop the phrase into your own mind, into your own awareness, and allow it to resonate within your own mind and heart. See what comes forth as in response to each of those facts. Feel free to reflect on them if you like. Feel free to dwell on whatever images or memories or thoughts that might be triggered by them. And in so doing, allowing ourselves to remember, to recollect these five different important facts about our life. The first one is, I'm of the nature to grow old. Aging is unavoidable. I'm of the nature to grow old. Aging is unavoidable. Drop it into your mind and heart and see what happens. Periodically repeat the words. Bring it to the forefront of your attention. I'm of the nature to grow old. Aging is unavoidable. Whenever you notice that your thoughts, your attention may be drawn quite far away, you follow a train of thoughts and have arrived at a destination very far from the five remembrance, then simply invite your attention to come back here and now. And by repeating the words, start again. I'm of the nature to grow old. Aging is unavoidable. Feel free to stay as long as you like with each of the phrases. And of course, if you're doing it on your own, you can always vary it the way you do it. Moving on to the next one. I am of the nature to have ill health. Illness is unavoidable. I am of the nature to have ill health. Illness is unavoidable. Feel free to change the words, but nonetheless, drop the phrase into your own mind and heart and see what happens. And then the next phrase, I'm of the nature to die. Death is unavoidable. I am of the nature to die. Death is unavoidable. And then the fourth remembrance, all that is dear and beloved to me is of the nature to change. Separation is unavoidable. All that is dear and beloved to me is of the nature to change. Separation is unavoidable. And finally, in the face of the four facts of life, of aging, sickness, death, and separation, the Buddha offers us a refuge that we can rely on. The fifth remembrance. I am the owner of my actions. Whatever I do, whether good or evil, that I will inherit. I am the owner of my actions. Whatever I do, whether good or evil, that I will inherit. So see if you can reflect on this, on the power of our actions, consequences of our actions. As you repeat the phrase, think about what sort of choices you can make, what sort of actions you can engage in that will be your refuge. Coming back to the phrases of the five remembrance, repeating the fifth one, I am the owner of my actions. Whatever I do, whether good or evil, that I will inherit. As you say the words or similar words, reflect a little bit on the kind of actions and choices that you can do, that you can make, that will make a difference, especially in the face of the other four facts of aging, of sickness, of death, and separation. What are the objects of refuge that you can rely on in the face of these different facts? Okay, so there's a meditation or reflection on the 5 remembrances, 4 of which are facts of life, and the 5th is almost like the Buddha's prescription of what we can do in the face of it, referring to his teaching on karma, on actions. Or sometimes I summarize it as in a simple way: our actions have consequences, our actions have effects, which is a common sense, because that is precisely why we act, because we know it's going to make a difference, for good or for bad. Yeah. And to summarize this topic, or to conclude this topic on refuge, it all boils down to certain kind of actions. The way, even though we may have objects of refuge, we need to act in such a way that allow us to rely on them. It's only through the act of relying on them, or another way of putting it, to go for refuge, or to take refuge. So there is a verb involved: going, taking, relying on it. It's by taking those actions that we are able to find refuge for ourselves, help us to arrive at a place of a sense of safety, sense of peace and security and calmness, or even joy and happiness, which comes when we feel protected, we feel safe, and all boils down to actions. What sort of choices we make from one moment to another? What kind of actions do we find ourselves engaging in? Actions in the way the Buddha presented karma actions. It starts with the mind. What's going on in our mind? What sort of intention we have in our mind? What sort of thoughts do we engage in? And then that is expressed through speech, which is another kind of actions, so verbal actions. So mental actions, verbal actions, and then of course physically, through our behavior, through whatever physical actions we engage in. So through the 3 kinds of actions, we can make a difference for ourselves and also for others, and these days also for the environment. Yeah. So boil down to certain choices, and that will bring us to the next topic. So next week I will start on looking at the presentation of karma and the Buddha's teaching, and we'll learn a little bit more about it. And you're most welcome to think about it. And if you have questions, you can ask next week in our next session. And I think that's it for me with the topic of refuge. I often find refuge, when we talk about it, is very abstract. Sometimes a bit difficult to relate to in actual practice, but nonetheless, it's a very real thing. Especially, we can really appreciate when we find ourselves in need of a refuge, when we really face to face with, for example, one of those 4 facts of aging, the unpleasant side of aging, sickness, death, or separation. And among people around me, my friends, really, I can see, including my own experience, I often hear people going through a really tough time, and including myself, just to maintain one's sanity, so that one is not constantly overwhelmed by all those emotions and thoughts that are triggered by certain stressful situations in life. We seek refuge, and the difference is what sort of objects of refuge we rely on. Something as simple as reciting a mantra, or every day to persevere in doing a little bit of meditation, a little bit of practice. I was told that, and I find it in myself, it helps to preserve a little bit of sanity, like a sentry for the mind and heart. And that really enables us to face the rest of the day, face all the different upheaval. what is the role of a retreat in relation to taking refuge? Retreat or meditation retreats in the Buddhist sense is where we devote a specific length of time. We put ourselves in a essentially quite artificial setting, where we put aside all the different activities that might distract us and devote our full attention to cultivating certain practice. So in the sense of refuge, is a retreat gives you a much deeper experience of the practice itself, because you are able to undistractedly devote time and energy to familiarize, to habituate, and to deepen a certain practice. So it helps to strengthen our relationship with practice. And it is true, be it in a retreat or in our daily life, through this process of habituation, that we cultivate our objects of refuge, that in times of need, we find that the practice itself, or whatever it is, come forth spontaneously to support us. And this is very common. People find that they study the Dharma, study the Buddha's teaching, they meditate, they practice, or just discuss. And then at times of need, something just pops into their mind, or they start to look at this problem or situation from this other perspective presented by the Dharma, and find a solution, find something really helpful. And the retreat really makes it, make those experiences even stronger, and makes it even more likely, that when you really need it, the Dharma come forth to support us. Yeah. So, and of course, retreat is also the context in which we make real the Dharma through the realization of Dharma, which is the actual refuge. By bringing about the actual transformation, we really protect ourselves, protect our mind and hearts from all those old habits or bad habits, protect us from coming under the influence of our afflictive emotions, and also enable us to strengthen the compassion, positive qualities of mind and hearts. And the time will come when a situation where in the past we would be overwhelmed with fear or anxiety, we find that we are able to handle it completely peacefully, in a very relaxed way, not a problem for us. So that is the actualization of refuge. We don't even experience the usual fear or anxiety. We are able to handle it. Can you speak on the power of mantras in taking refuge? Mantra, one way of interpreting mantra, at least presented by my teacher, they often describe it as protection for the mind. And you can understand it. Mantra, especially one that you practice, one that you have come to build a strong positive association with, is associated with the mind, in the mind with positive things. Like, for example, the mantra of the Buddha of compassion is associated with the qualities of compassion. The mantra, one of my favorite mantra, is with the female Buddha form called Tara, Tara the liberator, to liberate us from fear. And so, and I find myself, I have done practice with Tara's mantra before, and at time of danger, this is my own experience. On more than one occasions, I just find myself, my mind goes straight to Tara's mantra. Not that it automatically changed the situation, but what happened is it protects my mind from being overwhelmed by the fear or by the panic. And just by the mantra, just in my case, the mantra just start by itself. Or you can just go and repeat the mantra. Then it really provides a support for the mind and attention. And through doing so, it keeps the mind from getting lost in thoughts of anxiety, thoughts of fear, of worried. It keeps bringing the mind back to something really positive, with positive association. Keep the mind in a more positive, constructive state. And out of that comes clarity. At least I experience help me to make better decision, or help me to avoid making hasty and quite often wrong choices. Yeah. So in that way, you can see how the mantra can serve to protect the mind and become also a refuge. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention and participation, and I wish you have a good week ahead. And I'll see you. Well, I hope you tune in next week for the continuation of this module. We're going to touch on karma. Have a good evening. Thank you.